Hey guys, it's Mike with JetSetSimmer. How's everybody doing? It's a beautiful sunny day here in Chicago. The sun is literally shining directly into the building across from us, so there might be some really bright lights, like if I go right here, but I'm gonna try to stick right here. However, I have a speed build for you today, so why don't we jump directly into it? So I've lived in Chicago for a few years now, but I've never actually done a build inspired by the architecture here in Chicago. And so for this build today, I decided to create some Chicago-style townhomes, or brownstones if you want to call them that. And actually, by the end of this build, I'm absolutely obsessed with these townhomes. They look so realistic in my opinion. However, I'm not a Chicago native, so I can't really say that this is definitely Chicago. I am a Chicago transplant, however, and I feel like they definitely just look like they fit right into Chicago. When I first moved to Chicago, I lived in an area called Avondale, and it's really close to Logan Square. If you've ever been to Chicago, then you might be familiar with the Logan Square area. However, there's a lot of townhomes in these areas that look similar to this, but not as, I guess, grand, if I could say that. However, when I met my boyfriend, he lived in Lakeview, so I did spend a lot of my time in the Lakeview Boys Town area of Chicago, and these townhomes, to me, look most similar to the townhomes that you could find in the Lakeview or Uptown or Boys Town area. Andersonville is another neighborhood I feel like these townhomes would fit directly into. But that's kind of the vibe that I was going after. I was going after those neighborhoods because the townhomes there are just so beautiful in my opinion. And the trees in these neighborhoods are usually super tall and kind of spread out over the buildings. And it's just so magical, especially in the fall and summer. It's absolutely gorgeous and so beautiful. So that's kind of the vibe I was trying to go with in this build. And so I created 2 separate brownstones. I was actually going to do 3, but I just narrowed it down to 2. And one brownstone is a complete house, just because sometimes you come across, brownstones in this area that is just one singular house. While the other brownstone is kind of like a used to be house that has now been converted into having 3 separate apartments in it. And that is what I used to live in. I used to live in a brownstone that had 3 separate apartments. So you had the main level be one apartment. Upstairs was basically an exact replica of the main level. And then downstairs was a basement apartment that looked different than the other 2 levels, but it was converted into its own apartment as well. So for that brownstone that's split into 3 different apartments, I definitely heavily used my apartment that I first lived in as inspiration for that build. And the layout is pretty much almost exactly the apartment I used to live in. It's different in some ways, but it's extremely similar in most ways. Definitely when it comes to the kitchen in that brownstone with the 3 separate apartments on the main level is exactly what my kitchen looked like when I first moved to Chicago and I was living with roommates. However, for the other brownstone, like I said, it's just a single home, and I feel like I haven't really gotten exposure to what it actually looks like in these single homes, but I feel like I kind of got the gist of it. Also, my boyfriend is a Chicago native, and so I kept asking him as well, does this seem accurate? Does this seem realistic? And he definitely thought that it did. So I felt like I was accomplishing the vibe of Chicago. And so for these brownstones, I put the stairs out in the front, and I tried to use some architecture decals that you find in most Chicago brownstone homes. And I would say definitely the trim at the top of the buildings is something you see a lot in a lot of these brownstones. You see those very intricate, gaudy trims. And not only that, but usually they're fenced in by some wrought iron fencing. And so I use the wrought iron fencing from, I think it's the Vampire Pack, for the entire front and surrounding areas of this build. And then I also filled in a lot of plants. I actually put some planter boxes in the front, which is a very Chicago thing. Usually you'll have the walkway, and on one side is, the plants in front of the brownstone homes with the staircase going up. And then on the other side, you have this little planter box that majority of the time the city comes and they plant plants into those planter boxes. Another part of this build that I actually really love are the back porches. And I'm not sure if I've gotten to that point in this video, but you'll see. For brownstones in Chicago, I feel like Chicago has a very unique style because they have these porches and these staircases that are all made out of wood that are just kind of like pasted onto the back of these buildings. Brownstones in Chicago are different than brownstones in New York City. Usually the brownstones in New York City have the fire escapes, whereas in Chicago, we don't really have many buildings that have fire escapes. They do exist. There are some buildings with fire escapes, but the majority of homes or brownstone style homes don't actually have fire escapes. They have these back porches on each level that is all wood, and then a very I don't know. Each of them have this staircase that just kind of wraps down and around. And it's just a very specific, unique thing for Chicago, it seems like. I'm sure these types of homes exist in other cities as well, but I feel like this is a definite giveaway that it's a Chicago brown style home if you look at the back porches. And so I had a lot of fun building those just because I think it's really cool, and to me it looks really realistic. It looks extremely similar to what you actually see walking throughout the neighborhoods here in Chicago. Also, to add on to that, another unique thing that I feel like is a dead giveaway that is Chicago is the little garages behind the house that are completely separate. And this is how the brownstone I used to live in pretty much looked like. We had our garage behind the house, and you had to pretty much exit the back of the house, go down the stairs, and then walk through the yard to get to your little garage that's connected to the alley behind your house. And so I definitely tried to do that with this build too, just because I feel like that's another dead giveaway that you're in Chicago. Most brownstones in New York City don't really have that feature. Usually they have the little backyard and it looks literally directly into the backyard of the brownstone on the other side of you. However, in Chicago, there's a lot of alleyways and there's garages that back up to those alleyways. And so I made sure to add the garages as well because I think that's another dead giveaway that you are in Chicago and that it's a Chicago brownstone. Also, here's another fun fact about Chicago, and I'm not sure if this is also something you see in other cities, but I definitely know in New York City you don't see this often. And I may be totally off with this, but I feel like definitely in New York City, for those New York City brownstones, a lot of those neighborhoods don't really have alleys. So to dispose of your garbage, you throw your trash away in the front of your house. If that makes sense, am I making any sense? I think what I'm trying to say is that usually your trash bins in New York City go in front of your brownstone, and the trash pickup comes through the street and, picks up the trash from your trash bins and whatnot. And it could sometimes get really dirty in some areas of New York City, and you have a lot of trash out in front of your homes. Just because there's no real alleyways in some of these neighborhoods to pick up your trash if you store it in the back. However, fun fact in Chicago is that there's alleyways in almost every single neighborhood in the city besides downtown. And so a lot of people dispose their trash in, the alley. You have your bin in the alley and the trash pickup service comes through the alley and picks up trash that way. And so you don't often see a lot of trash out in front of the brownstones, which is nice because it just kind of gives a really clean, nice looking vibe. Not to say that there aren't areas in New York City that are like that, because I'm sure there are. I may be totally off. That's my opinion. So if you are from New York City, let me know in the comments if I'm totally off and share your experience or your observations. I don't know. However, here in Chicago, all of our trash is picked up in the alley, which is why in this build, I kind of focused on putting trash bins and trash bags and kind of garbage in the alleys, because that's realistically what the alleys look like. And the alleyways in Chicago aren't necessarily peachy clean and extremely neat either. You do see a lot of rubbish on the floor in the alleyways as well. So I tried to give that feel. However, that's a little fun fact about Chicago, and that's why I really love those neighborhoods too, because it just always seems so clean in front of these brownstones. And with the tall trees and the lighting, it's just really magical, definitely in spring, summer, and fall. And winter is magical, but it's different. It's magical in a different way, and the magic only lasts really like for the first few times it snows. After that, you're just sick of the snow, and so the magic kind of wears off. However, then for the rest of the build, I spent time kind of furnishing each apartment, and I kind of got lazy by the end of the build. And I mean, this video just took so long to record, so I'm not going to spend time focusing or showing you the process of furnishing the apartment, so I'm sorry if that's your favorite part. But I definitely will open up this build and I'll give you a little tour of each apartment so you could see how I furnished it and how each apartment kind of tells a different story. But other than that, I really loved doing this build. I shared some images of my work in progress on Twitter, and people were like, oh my gosh, this looks so realistic. And then I posted the final product on my Twitter, and I had a lot of Chicagoans come out and say, I live in Chicago and I can attest, I can agree, I can confirm this looks exactly like builds or houses you would see in Chicago. And it definitely made me feel really accomplished because I really spent so much time on this build and I love it. And it actually kind of inspired me to continue doing different architecture styles you might see in Chicago and making homes of that in The Sims. And so who knows, maybe I'll create like a whole save file where the city of Newcrest is all like Chicago style architecture homes and storefronts. I don't know. Maybe. If that's something you would be interested in, let me know in the comments. Should I start up a Chicago series where I just recreate architecture styles in The Sims of Chicago? I don't know. Let me know in the comments if that would be something you would like to see. However, I think I'll open up my game real quick and I'll give you a quick little tour of the pairing of brownstones that I created. Okay, so the sun is literally right in the building across, so I'm gonna try to scoot over so hopefully you can see me. Hopefully. However, here is the build, and it's so cute. I copied and pasted this lot onto the lot next door just to continue to give that Chicago vibe. And look how freaking cute this build is. I love it. It literally looks just like a little street here in Chicago, in my opinion. So here is the front of the build, and like I said, it just literally looks so realistic in my opinion. I've got all of this foliage here. We've got the little planters out in the front, and something funny about Chicago is they always put these decorative like plant pieces in the little planter boxes in Chicago. So I placed this to kind of go for that vibe of like that like really decorative plant type of piece in the planter boxes. And when you come around to the back, the staircases with the porches and everything, this is the dead giveaway in my opinion that you're in Chicago, because it literally looks just like this. When you're walking around neighborhoods in Chicago and you look through it, I don't know, it looks spot on in my opinion. And then here's a little alleyway that I was referring to. I wish I could change the look of the lot outside of the actual lot because this doesn't really look like an alley, but you get the idea, right? And like I was saying, here's the little trash items with the rubbish on the floor and the garbage bags and the bins in the back next to your little garages, just because I feel like that's a very Chicago thing. However, why don't we jump into the interior of these little brownstone homes? But before we do that, I want to highlight this little piece. So there is a little stairwell right here that leads down to the apartment downstairs, and I feel like sometimes you see it not exactly like this because it's kind of hard to replicate in The Sims, but it's the same vibe. Sometimes the basement unit has an entrance in the front with a little stairwell that you go down, so that's kind of the vibe that I was going for. However, usually in real life this is lifted a little higher, and so usually it's not that steep of a staircase, and usually you have little windows on the sides of the buildings and stuff. And that whole basement unit is referred to as a garden apartment, but that's kind of the vibe that I was going for, so just so you know. However, when you first walk in, you walk into here and I've got mailboxes placed here. I don't know if they're actually functional, so I did place like mailboxes in the front as well. So hopefully one of those mailboxes is a functional mailbox and you can receive mail in it. I don't know. But usually in these brownstones that are separated into multiple apartments, you walk in and there's a staircase here, and you have a little apartment door directly to your left side or right side, depending on where your entrance is. So that's the vibe I was going for this little entryway. You walk in and here is the first apartment door. And for this apartment, I just decided to go kind of simple and earthy. This isn't exactly like our apartment that I first lived in when we moved here was a little longer, but I had to make it a little shorter for this lot. But it's super cute. I love the style of this little apartment. It's pretty tight, it's pretty small, but I feel like that's pretty much how a lot of these brownstones are here in Chicago. Then you walk through this way and you have a little hallway here, and then directly through this door is the bathroom. And this is almost exactly what our bathroom looked like in the first apartment I moved into when I moved to Chicago. And I love when you look out the window, you could literally see directly into the building right next to you, because that's pretty much exactly how it is. And then in this little apartment, I fit 2 bedrooms. And so this first bedroom here, I put a little kid's room, and it's very small. And I'm not kidding you, like, this is not an exaggeration. If you have lived in a city before, I'm sure you know. However, my first bedroom in Chicago was literally pretty much this size, if not smaller. It felt like I was living in a tiny closet. I could only fit my twin bed and this dresser in there. Nothing else fit. And so it was definitely hard to go from a big bedroom to living in a tiny little closet. But I made it work, and it honestly was pretty growing for me. Like, I felt like I grew a little bit living in a tiny room like that. And then this kitchen is literally exactly what my kitchen looked like in the first apartment I lived in here in Chicago. We had a little window and the kitchen was kind of sectioned off like this. We had a microwave over the range, but obviously we can't do that in The Sims. However, this is pretty much exactly what the kitchen looked like in the little brownstone townhome we lived in. I did add this dining room set here, but our dining room set was in the same room as our living room, just because that room was a little longer in real life. And then right here we have another bedroom, and I just kind of fit in like this main bedroom, so you've got your double bed in here. It's pretty tight, but you know, it's still pretty cute. And then when you go out the back door, you have your little patio here, and so I put some seating, just very simple. You have the stairwell that goes down into the garage. I feel like I just got super overwhelmed by the end of this build, so I didn't put anything in the garage, but you know, it is what it is. Then up here you have another little patio. I put some plants, hanging plants, and like a planter box up here because I feel like that's something you see most often on people's porches. And then there's this back door, and it's basically the same exact apartment downstairs, just different color scheme and vibe. And so the kitchen is pretty much exactly the same. This is the main bedroom, and the apartment upstairs is a little more distinguished and gaudy. The story I felt like telling with this one is maybe an older couple lives in this unit upstairs. And then here we've got like a little office bedroom. And I actually was surprised with how much fit in this little bedroom, which is pretty realistic to real life. Like, I was surprised how much I fit in my little closet of a bedroom. And then the bathroom is literally the exact bathroom downstairs, just different colors. And the living room is just a little more gaudy and a little more distinguished and I guess upper class than the unit downstairs. And I feel like this is realistic in Chicago because even though these are tiny apartments, people from all walks of life live in these apartments. And so I feel like it's a very common to have, you know, a group of young people living in one unit and they're all roommates, and then upstairs you have like a family or an older couple. Like our neighbors upstairs were definitely an older couple. They had some older children living there, and so that's kind of the vibe that I was going with here. And then through this door is just a stairwell back downstairs to the entrance. And then I'll take you to the garden apartment right downstairs. So for this garden apartment, you have the stairwell coming down. You can't really tell, it's funky in The Sims, but the stairwell comes down and then you have your entrance right here. And for this apartment, I kind of went with like a bachelor pad type of vibe because that's just the neighbor that we had living below us in the basement in the garden apartment. He was a bachelor, and so it was just like a very bro-y apartment, if I could say that. And so that's kind of the vibe that I went with here. The kitchen is obviously more updated and different than the kitchens upstairs, and so is the bathroom. You have the bathroom directly in here, and it's just kind of a more updated bathroom. And I feel like that's because in real life, like many brownstones were actually single unit homes that were converted to be separated into apartments, and the basement is usually the last one to be converted, and usually it has the more updated bathroom and whatnot. Not only that, but especially in garden apartments, you kind of have to market it to make it worth it for somebody to move into it, and so usually the bathrooms are a little nicer, not in every place, but in some places, And then I added windows here. These aren't actual functional windows. I wish we could do that in The Sims, but that's pretty much the vibe. And the vibe in this apartment is very much like a bachelor pad. I feel like a single guy probably lives down here. Now we'll go into the next door unit, and this one is just the single family home. And so when you walk in here, you have the direct opening into the living room. And I feel like many townhomes that aren't converted into separate apartments look very much like this, where you walk in and you have the little entrance with the stairwell and then the living room and stuff. This one is a lot smaller than next door, and so the living room is very tight, as you can see. And then right back here, you walk through, there's like this little dining area with this little bump out, and then the kitchen. It's just a super simple kitchen. There's really nothing super special about it, but I feel like some people that I know that I've seen their apartments, they have this type of layout with the kitchen where it just kind of sits right against the little patio, and then you could come directly out here and you've got the little patio area. It's super cute. Stairwell again, straight down to the garage, and then you got the stairwell going up to your neighbor's patio upstairs. Off the dining room, there's also this door, and it goes into a bathroom. This bathroom is a little more updated than the unit or the townhome next door. And then upstairs, you have the stairwell that just kind of comes up, and it's very tight, and then there's this hallway. It looks a little funky, but I feel like a lot of these houses are a little funky upstairs, especially when they're converted. But we've got a little kid's bedroom right here, and it's just a very tight little small area. It's super cute. This is the bathroom right here, and it's a more updated bathroom right off the hallway. And again, when you look out the window, you're literally looking directly into your neighbor's apartment, which is so realistic. My bedroom looks straight into a window looking into the bedroom of the brownstone next to us, so it was interesting sometimes, especially since I didn't have blinds, so my windows were like always open, which I was fine with, but like sometimes it could be a little weird. And then here's the main bedroom upstairs, so you've got a closet and the little bump out again like downstairs, and then up here you have a little office nook, and then this section goes back out to your back porch, which is nice because both back porches are for the single family living in this home, and it's just super cute. I'll show you the garages real quick. I did put a few things in the garages. The plants are kind of clipping in, but I didn't put anything in the other garage. I just kind of got bored or like over this build by the point I got to the garages. However, I will mention the backyards, and this isn't for every backyard in Chicago. Some backyards are super nice and people take care of them, but for the mass majority of people, there's just always weeds in the backyard, or not necessarily weeds, but tall grass. And so that's kind of what I went with here, like the grass just kind of overgrown in the backyard. And the reason for that, especially in townhomes like this where you have 3 separate apartments in one, I feel like there's always confusion on who actually is supposed to take care of the backyard. And most cases I feel like the landlords do, but like in our case, the landlord rarely ever came to take care of the backyard, so we definitely had tall grass growing. So usually you wouldn't enjoy the backyards as much as you would if you owned the entire townhome and you were the only family living in it. Because the one with 3 apartments, yeah, usually it's just kind of the community area and you just keep to your own porch. But however, that's an entire tour of these little brownstone townhomes that are in the Chicago style. If you do want to download the Chicago style brownstones into your game, I have posted them up on the gallery. You can find me on the gallery. My username is JetSetSimmer anywhere you go, and here they are right here. I've just titled them Chicago Townhomes. I tried not to use a ton of packs. However, I did use like a few items. I think maybe like 1 or 2 items from some of these packs. Majority of the things that I used pretty much come from base game, and I think like the get together and whatnot, but I tried to minimize my pack usage on this build. That way more people could download this into their game and actually enjoy it. But that is essentially the entire build. I am kind of inspired to do a Chicago neighborhood now and maybe a Chicago save file. If you're interested in that type of thing, please let me know in the comments below, or let me know on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter. My username is JetSetSimmer. Other than that, I'm going to go. Thank you so much for watching, guys. And if you have any other ideas for Chicago builds, let me know in the comments below. Other than that, I hope you have a great rest of your day. See you guys.